It has been such a long time since we were able to do the podcast, but finally we are back. But speaking of which, before we get to the actual podcast part of this video, we put out a poll today saying everyone has three options. First option, we can do the current system we're running at right now. We do the podcast every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, or every Wednesday and Sunday with way shorter podcasts. But Wednesdays is me and Taysom, and Sundays is the whole podcast team with Brody, Caesar, me, Scrib, everyone else, and Shadow, of course. There are 6 or 7 people on the podcast team. And Sundays, where it's just longer podcasts, special guests, better graphics, everything better prepared, lots of more topics, a longer podcast, and the whole podcast team. Option 3, you can vote for option 3. Spam the number in the chat that you want to have, which number of options would you like the best. But the most effective way of doing that is actually going to the GSCS Discord, going to GSCS polls, and actually voting with the options of 1, 2, or 3 in the emojis on the bottom under the channel. But to go to the GSCS Discord, if you're not already in it, don't forget to go in the description and click on it so you can actually be involved in everything that's happening. Don't forget to subscribe, and share. Now we can start off with the podcast version of this video, and we have some crazy news. And unfortunately, again, today is one of those days I have to say, well, welcome to the podcast alone, because remember, Taysom's not here, and most people have already chose number 3, and Taysom has announced that he will likely retire from the podcast in general, and probably from the league. Well, not from the league in general, but maybe from specific higher positions, because he is still going through rehab and everything like that. So Taysom, remember, he ended up not being on this main podcast for a little while, for the past couple of weeks as well, and that's kind of stalled this podcast's production as well. Without Taysom, it was just me and Tonic running things behind the scenes in this podcast. So Taysom was definitely a big help, but now with option number 3, we're going to be able to come much more prepared, and Taysom and Tonic are not, unfortunately, might not be able to be a part of that type of that podcast. But of course, I'm everywhere you go. So whether you like me, whether you hate me, you're gonna have to deal with it. But let's actually get to the real topics of this podcast. You can look at some of the recent scores in the show matches and official scrimmages that go to your off-season record down below at the bottom of your screen, bottom right side of your screen. Team Comeback 4-0 Tyrant, Comeback 3-0 Lucid, Team Lunar 4-1 Tyrant, Team Comeback 4-1 Ryft One. Some of these matches happened about a week ago while we were on off break, and some of these we talked about in the previous podcast, which was a while ago, and sorry we haven't been able to consistently come up with this podcast since Taysom left. But we can talk about something else. In Fellowframe, you should welcome him to Team Comeback, because I talked about this in the last podcast. He's on Team Comeback. He is one of the only SSLs in this league that is eligible to play due to rules and rank. So, and already his first couple of scrimmages with the team, they have not lost a single scrimmage in the GSCS or outside the GSCS, even taking down almost taking down an SSL team, and also taking down mid to low GC3 teams as well. Super diverse ranks that they're going up against. Their chemistry is already starting to develop. They're doing scrims every day with Team Comeback, and Fellowframe definitely looks like he fits in perfectly with that roster. The day 1, they're gonna have to. Team Comeback is gonna have to do without Fellowframe. It's on Sunday, so he's gonna. They might have to do without Fellowframe on. No, they actually can play with Fellowframe. I forgot, due to his work hours. But on day 2 and day 3, they might have to be without Fellowframe. Due to some of the schedules of some of the matches, and it's going to be not Solar, Caesar, and Devo. That's going to be their main starting roster. That even started against Naptown Saturn when they first came together. You can find that VOD, a couple of videos back in this YouTube channel. But now we can move on to Blizzard Esports roster revamp. Yes, there's been a lot of rumors about Blizzard Esports roster revamping. upcoming for this GSCS Elite, and they are actually requesting to Blizzard Esports are actually requesting to be replaced as a team for the GSCS Elite Invitational, meaning so that for that off-season event we're gonna have to find a replaced team to replace them. But for Blizzard Esports themselves, they're going to be working on the roster revamp after the annual Grand Finals, as their roster has definitely changed a lot. So Blizzard Esports and Alfredo Cat on that roster go back to their absolutely dominating fashion ways that they were back in December and early January, or will they be a shell version of themselves after this roster revamp? So we're gonna have to see. But how good is Naptown Saturn gonna be? Especially because Fellowframe, we just talked about him. He came from Naptown Saturn, and even Pink was talking about it's gonna be hard to really be without Fellowframe. But we're gonna have to see how that actually works out, because Fellowframe and company, Naptown Saturn and Scrib and company, Scrib always finds a way to make things work. I talked about it in the last podcast. I'm gonna talk about it in this one. Scrib, he always knows how to make things work. I'm not too worried about them finding anything to really work out in their favor. It's just the fact of how quickly it is going to be and how much chemistry they're going to have before the GSCS Elite Invitational coming up this upcoming Sunday. Now for the GSCS Elite Open Rivalries. And I want to spend a little bit of time on this topic because, oh boy, do we have some big ones. In Group A, the one I don't think anyone has not talked. I'm pretty sure everyone has mentioned this. Everyone has said this is going to be the biggest rivalry this season. Brody himself on stream, on the podcast, in the chats, he has been publicly saying this. This will be the biggest rivalry of the GSCS season. Okay, Ryft One and Team Lunar. Whoever does not know the story about this, tune in. Just keep listening, because we're gonna go to GSCS News Insider and GSCS Admin for this one. Taysom.
Ho, do I like myself some rivalries to report about. Hello everyone and welcome back to the Tay Show, presented by the Gaming Spot Championship Series and Checkmate Gaming. I don't know. Oh boy. Unfortunately, this likely might be my last podcast here as well. Officially, this might be my last ever appearance on the podcast without being named the special guest. But do we have some rivalries? I mean, Ryft One and Lunar. I mean, if you don't know that story, Anatita, let me tell you guys this story. Anatita wants me to tell it to you. Let me tell you to you guys. Holy mac. So, a starting roster consisting of Cloud, Spec, and Typical, also known as Mellow, ended up leaving Team Lunar. Yeah, I mean, let me go the full length of the pitch on this one. So, first we can talk about they added Typical to the roster, Mellow to the roster, and he started against God Alliance Purity when Team Lunar went up against God Alliance. They took down God Alliance 3-1 in a best of 5 series. It was a pretty decent series, very, very decent game. I think Typical looked pretty decent in that, but some drama happened internally. I don't want to specify what specifically happened, but it was between Brody and Typical, and it ended up causing Typical to leave Team Lunar. And the storyline here is while Brody Bones, well, before that all happened, actually, Brody Bones and Mel were actually in a fight over who should take Clouds, and Clouds ended up winning that fight, going to Team Lunar and Brody Bones. And that didn't last too long. After that scrimmage with God Lions was typical. Everything kind of just fell apart, and it all fell out of the favor of Brody Bones, I should say. And Typical ended up leaving, and then Clouds and Typical have known each other for about 3 years, so they ended up, played with each other for 3 years rather, and they ended up leaving together. So Clouds and Typical, around that same time, about a couple of minutes after Clouds and Typical ended up leaving, Brody ended up offering Mel Clouds. He ended up offering Mel Clouds for not Solar, and Mel, he does not want to change up his roster at all. He has said that multiple times. Super stubborn. So he kept on denying up until last week. Brody has still been trying to get Not Solar, of course, in place of Clouds, but Clouds so what Brody was trying to do, he didn't know that Clouds had left his team minutes earlier, and that would actually be an invalid trade against the rules. If Mel had accepted it, Brody could have been in serious trouble in the league. But Clouds ended up leaving and ended up trying out with Blizzard Esports anyway, but ended up splitting up to make their own team called Ryft One. A couple of days later, Spec, who was also the starter for Team Lunar, ended up joining Ryft One. And Ryft One, ever since then, has only lost one or two series, and that one series against Team Comeback.
Thanks, Taysom. Hopefully this won't be your last podcast, but it is. We definitely wish you the best in everything you do, but he will continue to be a GSCS insider, bringing some information for the podcast, and he will continue to own Team Comeback as well. But yeah, you heard some of the information, and you can already tell why this is a rivalry, because Ryft One left Team Lunar to create their own team and go up against Brody essentially, and things didn't work out between them, and now Brody was caught in this awkward spot, and now he still has issues, all types of things going on with his roster. As recently there's been trade drama, which has caused a suspension, and there's a whole other story on that. But I mean, there is just some crazy stuff that has gone on in the past. So many controversial things have gone on recently, and even Taysom has some more news on one of the reasons why Brody still has a little bit of trouble figuring out this roster.
Thank you for your wishes long term, Anno. But yeah, Brody. Yeah, I mean, more recently, a couple of days ago, a trade between Team Lucid Esports rather, and Team Lunar has recently happened. Actually, Lucid ended up trading Lunar. They traded Lunar Flixie, Scraps, and I believe someone else. And then Lunar ended up giving Lucid Atomic and Illusion. And Illusion was originally on Lucid Esports after having a tiny stint with Blizzard. But yeah, Illusion is now on Comeback. But Brody ended up trying to trade those players back to Lucid because he reportedly wanted all those players to be over the age of 15 years old. So that's some information. And then Lucid, the owner of Lucid and the owner of Lunar, Brody and Chase ended up getting into a little argument, and thus going to some directions that are staff matters and cannot be revealed. But yeah, long story short, all the players got traded back. Lucian, before he got traded back to Lunar, just decided to dip, but in mid-trade just decided to dip, and Devo from Team Comeback ended up adding him to the sub-roster of Team Comeback. So a little bit of trade drama happening over there, and still, Brody Bones. I mean, even Team Comeback tried out FTP, and then FTP left Lunar for like a day, and then there was some drama happening with that that had to do with Caesar and FTP both getting suspended. Their suspensions will be removed this Thursday. Back to you, Anastasia, for the closing out.
Thanks. Oh boy. Drama is the name and the game of the GSCS. Oh, my name is the GSCS and drama is my game. That's what it has been the past couple of weeks, and continuous drama, of course, between Ryft One and Team Lunar. And very coincidentally, this has not happened on purpose. Team Lunar and Ryft One are actually facing each other on the first series of the GSCS Elite Invitational this Sunday evening. We're gonna have it streamed, televised, a whole podcast crew, and everything. That's why we actually bring up this topic between Lunar and Ryft One, because of the matchup that's happening this Sunday between the two in the GSCS Offseason Elite Invitational. But yeah, another rivalry to potentially watch out for. That's not really heated, but gameplay-wise, two most likely teams from Group B trying to fight for that number one spot that's everyone predicting to go either number one, number two is God Lions and Team Comeback. Whoever gets the tiebreaker over them in their day 2 or series 3 matchup will likely be the one to get the number one spot, unless the other has a worse record or some stuff happens, you know. But yeah, that's another rivalry to watch out for. But of course, that Brody Bones rivalry and that Clouds rivalry is going to be so key. And will that be dramatic or not? Oh my goodness. But yeah, my name is Anno Tita from Anno Gaming Spot, the GSCS. Thank you for watching the GSCS podcast presented by Anno Gaming Spot, Checkmate Gamer, ARM Notary Services, and the Gaming Spot Championship Series itself. Good luck to Taysom wherever he goes. But that's going to be it for us on the GSCS. It's time to say goodbye.